I'm Paula, 57 years old, and looking back at my 15-year marriage to Richard still brings mixed emotions. Throughout our relationship, he constantly reminded me that I wasn't smart enough to succeed on my own. Last month, he tried to humiliate me by sending a smug invitation to an economics conference where he'd be the keynote speaker. What he didn't realize was that I wasn't just attending the event. I owned the entire company organizing it. Sometimes life gives you perfect opportunities for closure you never knew you needed. Before I share my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. If you're enjoying this already, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Get comfortable because this is a story about being underestimated, finding your strength, and the sweetest professional revenge served ice cold. I met Richard back in 1992 at a university fundraiser in Boston. I was 24 then, working in the events department after graduating from community college with an associate's degree in business administration. He was 28, a rising star in the economics department, already making waves with his research on market predictions. The university ballroom was decorated with twinkling lights that night. I was running around making sure everything went smoothly when Richard approached me. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that contrasted with my simple black dress and comfortable shoes chosen for a night of managing logistics. "This champagne has been sitting here for 20 minutes. Shouldn't someone be passing it around?" he asked, not unkindly, but with that academic precision that would later become so familiar. I smiled professionally. "Actually, sir, the champagne service begins at 8:30 after the dean's welcome speech. We found guests enjoy it more with the dessert course." He looked surprised, then impressed. "Well thought out. I apologize for questioning your system." He extended his hand. "I'm Richard Harmon, Economics Department. Paula Mitchell, Events Management." Our handshake lingered a moment longer than necessary. What followed was a whirlwind romance that swept me off my feet. Richard was brilliant, confident, and initially he seemed fascinated by my practical approach to problem solving. He'd talk for hours about economic theories, while I'd listen, genuinely interested in his passion. When I shared stories about event disasters I'd managed to fix, he called me resourceful and quick on your feet. We married in June 1994, in a carefully budgeted ceremony I organized myself. The early years were happy, built on what I thought was mutual respect. We moved into a small colonial near campus, and I supported his career advancement while continuing to work in event management for the university. The shift in our dynamic was so gradual, I barely noticed it happening. As Richard published more papers and gained recognition in his field, his attitude toward my career began to change. What he once called resourceful became adequate planning. My professional opinions that he previously valued became simplistic views. I remember planning a major donor dinner where I suggested seating the university president next to a potential 7-figure donor instead of following the traditional hierarchy. "Paula, darling," Richard said, sighing as he adjusted his tie in the mirror, "there are established protocols for these things. Your community college training might not have covered it, but there are sophisticated social dynamics at play." I followed my instinct anyway and seated them together. The donor committed to funding a new research wing that night. When I told Richard, he shrugged and said, "Lucky coincidence. But next time, better stick to the conventional approach." As Richard's reputation grew, so did his speaking engagements. I'd help him prepare his presentations, offering suggestions on making complex economic concepts more accessible. "That's sweet, Paula," he'd say, patting my hand, "but these are academics. They don't need simplification. They'd find it condescending, actually." Yet, when I attended his lectures, I'd notice audience members struggling to follow his more technical points. But whenever I mentioned it, he'd remind me that I hadn't even finished a bachelor's degree, so I couldn't possibly understand the academic standards. After 8 years of marriage, I found myself hiding my professional ambitions from Richard. I stopped sharing ideas for improving university events. I nodded along to his assertions that I was doing fine in my little job that was perfectly suited to my abilities. Meanwhile, I watched him build his career, wondering when exactly his respect for me had turned into this patronizing tolerance. I was 32 years old, and somehow I had become a supporting character in my own life story. By our 10th anniversary, Richard had become a full professor with tenure. His speaking calendar was filled months in advance, and his textbook was being used in universities across the country. At home, he grew increasingly dismissive of my role in organizing university events. "Anyone could do what you do, Paula," he said one evening as I worked late organizing a major alumni weekend. "It's just making lists and ordering food." I looked up from my spreadsheets and timeline documents. "There's actually quite a bit more to it than that." Sure, he replied, not looking up from his book. "I'm not saying it's not useful, just that it's not particularly challenging." That same week, I oversaw an event for 5,000 alumni that went off without a single hitch, despite a power outage and a last-minute speaker cancellation. The university president personally thanked me. Richard didn't even ask how it went. It was around this time that I started dreaming about having my own event management company. I had built relationships with vendors, understood the logistics of events of all sizes, and had ideas for innovative approaches that the university was too traditional to try. One Sunday morning over breakfast, I worked up the courage to share my dream with Richard. "I've been thinking about starting my own event management company," I said, trying to keep my voice casual while my heart raced. "I've got the experience now, and I see a gap in the market for academic and professional conferences with more engaging formats." Richard lowered his newspaper and looked at me with amusement. "Your own company, Paula, be realistic. You're not smart enough to run a business. There's accounting, legal considerations, marketing strategy. Stick to what you know. The university provides you structure and supervision. That's what you need." His words felt like a physical blow. I pushed my eggs around my plate, appetite gone. "Besides," he continued, returning to his paper, "most small businesses fail in the first year. I wouldn't want you to be disappointed." What Richard didn't know was that his dismissal lit a fire in me. The next day, I contacted Janice, a former university colleague who had successfully launched her own PR firm. We met for coffee away from campus. "He's wrong, Paula," she said firmly, after I recounted Richard's reaction. "I've seen you manage million-dollar events with complicated logistics and difficult personalities. You have exactly the skills needed to run a successful event company." Over the next several months, Janice helped me develop a business plan in secret. We met during my lunch breaks or when Richard was traveling for conferences. She introduced me to her accountant and a small business attorney who helped me understand the financial and legal aspects of starting a company. The turning point came at one of Richard's department functions. While refilling my water glass, I overheard a conversation between two board members from a large financial services company. They were complaining about their annual conference planning. "The same boring format every year," one said. "Death by PowerPoint followed by rubber chicken dinner." Without overthinking, I introduced myself and mentioned a few ideas for making corporate events more engaging. They seemed intrigued and asked for my card. I didn't have one that wasn't university branded, so I promised to email them. That night, I created a simple personal email address and sent them a one-page proposal with innovative conference ideas. 2 weeks later, one of them called me. Harold Thompson, their board chairman, wanted to meet. "Your ideas are fresh," he said over coffee. "Our company holds 16 conferences annually, and they all need reinvention. Would you consider consulting for us?" I hesitated. "I actually have a bigger vision. I'm planning to launch my own event management company focused on reimagining academic and corporate events." Harold leaned forward. "Even better. Our foundation has a business incubator program. With your experience and vision, I think you'd be a strong candidate for investment." As I drove home, I felt a surge of confidence I hadn't experienced in years. Richard's voice echoed in my head, "You're not smart enough to run a business." For the first time in a long time, I didn't believe him. With a modest investment from Harold's foundation, I quietly launched EventSphere in 2004. I rented a small office downtown and hired 2 part-time assistants while maintaining my university position. Richard assumed my longer hours were due to university events becoming too complicated for you to manage efficiently. My first major client was actually Harold's company. I completely redesigned their annual leadership conference, replacing lengthy lectures with interactive workshops, implementing technology for real-time feedback, and creating networking opportunities that participants actually enjoyed. The event was a tremendous success. We've never had such positive evaluations, Harold told me afterward. The executive team wants you to handle all our events moving forward. This single contract provided enough security for me to bring on a full-time project manager. Within 6 months, word of mouth brought 3 more corporate clients. I was working 14-hour days, racing between my university job, EventSphere, and home. Richard remained oblivious to my growing business. When I came home exhausted, he assumed I was struggling with the basics at the university. When I received calls from clients during dinner, I would step away and pretend they were university colleagues. You need to set boundaries with work, Richard lectured one evening after I returned from taking a call. It's not like you're running a company. The irony almost made me laugh out loud. By the 18-month mark, EventSphere was thriving. We had 12 corporate clients, had hired 5 full-time staff, and were generating respectable profits. I finally felt ready to leave my university position and focus entirely on my company. I was also ready to tell Richard. I planned to share the news during a special dinner at home. I prepared his favorite meal and practiced what I would say. I wouldn't be confrontational, just matter-of-fact about my success. But before I could have that dinner, Richard discovered the truth in the worst possible way. He was looking for our insurance documents and found EventSphere financial statements I had accidentally left in our home office. "What is EventSphere Management LLC?" he demanded, bursting into the kitchen where I was cooking. "And why does this document show you as the CEO?" My heart raced, but oddly I felt relief too. The secret was finally out. "It's my company, Richard. I started it almost 2 years ago." His face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and then amusement. "Your company. You've been playing entrepreneur." He laughed. "Paula, come on. Who's really running this thing? Is it Janice? Are you just helping her out?" "No, I founded it. I run it. We have 12 clients and 6 employees." Richard's smile faded as he flipped through the documents. "This shows substantial revenue." He looked up, his expression hardening. "You've been hiding this from me, making business decisions without consulting me." "Yes," I said simply, "because you told me I wasn't smart enough to run a business." "I was trying to protect you from failure," he snapped. "No, you were undermining my confidence. You've been doing it for years." The argument that followed was ugly. Richard swung between accusing me of disloyalty and dismissing my success as beginner's luck or unsustainable. He insisted on meeting with whoever is actually making the strategic decisions. The final breaking point came 2 weeks later at a dinner party with his colleagues. Someone asked what I did, and I started to explain EventSphere. Richard interrupted. "Paula's playing at running a little event planning business," he said with a condescending smile. "It's her hobby. Keeps her busy while I'm working on my new book." In that moment, looking at his smug face, I realized our marriage was over. After 15 years, Richard would never see me as his equal. He would always diminish my achievements to maintain his sense of superiority. The next day, I contacted a divorce attorney. The divorce proceedings lasted 8 brutal months. Richard, stunned that I was actually leaving him, fought viciously for a share of EventSphere. "I provided the stable income that allowed you to take this entrepreneurial risk," his lawyer argued in mediation. "Dr. Harmon's financial and intellectual contributions to the household directly enabled this business venture." My attorney, a sharp woman named Stephanie, who specialized in high-conflict divorces involving businesses, was prepared. "Mrs. Harmon launched EventSphere without any financial support from her husband," she countered. "In fact, we have documented evidence of Dr. Harmon's repeated statements discouraging the business. Rather than supporting her venture, he actively undermined it and remained willfully ignorant of its existence. She presented emails, voicemails, and witness statements from friends who had heard Richard belittle my abilities and business acumen. The judge ultimately ruled that EventSphere was entirely my separate property. When the divorce was finalized in 2007, I felt both relief and profound grief. Despite everything, 15 years of marriage isn't easy to walk away from. I had loved Richard once, and part of me mourned the relationship we could have had if he had been able to see me as a partner rather than a subordinate. Richard didn't take the divorce or the loss of potential EventSphere profits well. He spread rumors throughout our social circle that I'd had one lucky break with a client who felt sorry for me, and that my business would collapse without his behind-the-scenes guidance. Some mutual friends believed him and distanced themselves from me. Others saw through his pettiness and remained supportive. Rather than engaging with the rumors, I channeled all my energy into growing EventSphere. We expanded beyond corporate events into large-scale academic conferences, bringing the innovative approaches that had worked in the corporate world into the more traditional academic sphere. I deliberately chose to operate behind the scenes, letting my growing team serve as the public face of the company. This wasn't out of shame or fear, but strategic positioning. I wanted our work to speak for itself, not be colored by personal drama or my divorce from a well-known academic. By 2010, EventSphere had 30 employees and offices in Boston and Chicago. We were managing over 60 major events annually with a reputation for flawless execution and innovative formats that boosted attendee engagement. Universities and academic associations began seeking us out, tired of declining attendance at traditional conferences. The company's growth paralleled my personal rebuilding. After years of having my intelligence and capabilities questioned, I worked with a therapist to recognize and counter the internal voice that sounded suspiciously like Richard. I reconnected with my love of learning, taking business courses, and eventually completing the bachelor's degree. I had postponed when I married Richard. As a divorced woman in her 40s, running a successful company, I found myself becoming a reluctant mentor to younger women in similar situations. I started speaking at small business events, sharing my journey from self-doubt to entrepreneurship. Our biggest breakthrough came in 2012, when EventSphere secured a contract with the National Association of Economic Research to manage their conference series, including their prestigious annual symposium. The irony wasn't lost on me that we would be organizing events for economists, including potentially some of Richard's colleagues. I had no direct contact with Richard during these years. Occasionally, I would see his name on conference programs or academic publications, but our paths never crossed. We had no children, no property left to divide, no reason for any communication. I had moved on, and I assumed he had too, until the email arrived in my inbox 5 years after our divorce. I was reviewing quarterly projections with my CFO when the notification appeared on my phone. The sender's name immediately brought back a flood of memories: Richard Harmon, PhD. After my CFO left, I stared at the unopened email for several minutes before finally clicking on it. Paula, it began without any warm greeting. I've been invited to deliver the keynote address at the National Economics Forum next month in Chicago. I noticed it's being organized by your company. I thought you might like to attend and see how high-level academic discussions are structured. Perhaps you could learn something to improve your event planning. The keynote will be particularly significant, as I'll be presenting my latest research, which is being considered for the Wharton Prize. Let me know if you'd like me to arrange a seat for you. Richard. Even after 5 years, his condescension remained intact. He assumed I would be merely attending an event my own company was orchestrating. His offer to arrange a seat for me at my own conference would have been laughable if it weren't so infuriating. I immediately called Alexis, our conference director, who handled the academic division. Alexis, the National Economics Forum next month. Who's the keynote speaker? Dr. Richard Harmon from Stanford, major name in predictive market modeling. Why is there an issue? I took a deep breath. Richard Harmon is my ex-husband. Silence on the line. Then, oh my God, Paula, I had no idea. He never mentioned any connection when our team interviewed him. Do you want us to find a replacement? I considered it briefly. I could easily have Alexis invent a scheduling conflict and find another keynote speaker, but something about running from this confrontation felt wrong. No, I decided. Keep him on the program. Just don't mention my involvement to him. Are you sure this is a major event with over 800 attendees? I'm positive. And Alexis, I'll be attending personally. After hanging up, I forwarded Richard's email to my personal therapist with a simple message: the universe has a sense of humor, need to discuss. Dr. Winters fit me in the next day. What are you hoping to get out of this situation, Paula? She asked after I explained everything. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to see the look on his face when he realizes I own the company. Part of me is terrified of facing him at all. Both reactions make sense, she said. This is a person who spent years undermining your confidence, but now you have concrete evidence of your success that even he can't dismiss. Over the next few weeks, I consulted with my closest friends about how to handle the situation. My college roommate Jane suggested I should cancel his keynote last minute. My business mentor Janice thought I should introduce him personally on stage for maximum impact. Harold, my first major client, and now a close friend, offered the most balanced advice. Be professional, be confident, and let your success speak for itself, he said. The best revenge isn't making him feel small, it's showing him how large you've become without him. I decided not to respond to Richard's email. Let him wonder if I would attend. Meanwhile, I worked with our team to ensure the conference would be flawless, reviewing every detail of the 3-day event that would host economists and business leaders from around the world. As the conference approached, I found myself obsessively checking the mirror, wondering if Richard would see the changes in me. I was 57 now, with silver streaks in my dark hair that I had decided to keep rather than color. I had lost the nervous mannerisms I developed during our marriage, the constant apologizing, the self-deprecating comments, the physical shrinking in his presence. The night before the conference, I laid out my outfit, a tailored navy suit that conveyed authority without trying too hard. I rehearsed potential interactions in my mind, determined to remain poised, regardless of Richard's reaction. You've built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing, I told my reflection. You have nothing to prove to him anymore. But as I turned out the light, I couldn't help hoping that tomorrow would finally close the chapter of self-doubt that Richard had written into my life story. The grand ballroom of the Chicago Lakeside Hotel buzzed with activity as I arrived at 6:30 in the morning, 4 hours before the conference opening. Event Sphere staff in their signature blue blazers moved purposefully, setting up registration tables, testing audiovisual equipment, and coordinating with hotel staff. Alexis spotted me and hurried over, tablet in hand. Everything's on schedule. Keynote speakers are all confirmed, including Dr. Harmon. She hesitated. He called last night requesting a larger screen for his presentation and a specific type of water at the podium. I smiled. Make sure he gets exactly what he needs. Today isn't about old grudges. I spent the morning checking details personally, something I rarely did anymore with my capable team, but today felt important. By 9:30, attendees began arriving: professors, researchers, industry economists, and graduate students from across the country. At 10:15, I stood backstage watching our MC welcome the crowd. As CEO, I would normally make brief opening remarks at an event of this caliber, but I had asked our Chief Operating Officer Marcus to handle it today. I wanted to observe Richard first to gauge his demeanor before revealing my position. Richard arrived precisely 45 minutes before his scheduled keynote, just as I was consulting with our tech team about the afternoon breakout sessions. He looked older, his dark hair now salt and pepper, but he carried himself with the same confident bearing I remembered. He was immediately greeted by one of our event coordinators, who had no idea of our history. Dr. Harmon, welcome. I'm Tiffany with EventSphere. We're so pleased to have you as our keynote. Yes, well, I hope everything is properly prepared, he replied, glancing around critically. I'll need to check the stage setup immediately. Of course, let me take you to see the audiovisual team. I ducked into a side room, not ready to be seen yet. Through the door's window, I watched Tiffany lead Richard toward the stage. My heart raced. After 5 years, the sound of his voice still triggered memories of countless diminishing comments. After Richard's technical check, he was escorted to the VIP speakers lounge. I mingled with arriving attendees, greeting university deans and department heads I had built relationships with over the years. Several complimented EventSphere on our reputation for excellent conferences. At 11:10, as attendees were settling into their seats for the opening session, Richard emerged from the lounge. His eyes scanned the crowd and locked with mine unexpectedly. A flash of recognition, then confusion crossed his face. He changed direction and walked directly toward me. Paula, he said, voice betraying surprise. You actually came. I didn't receive a response to my email. I extended my hand professionally. Hello, Richard. Yes, I'm here. He shook my hand briefly, his eyes taking in my tailored suit and confident posture. Well, I'm glad you took my suggestion. You might pick up some useful insights for your, what do you call it? Event circle. EventSphere, I corrected calmly. Right, of course. He glanced around. So they hired your company for this? That's nice. Though I'm surprised they went with such a small operation for an event of this caliber. Before I could respond, Tiffany approached us. Excuse me, Miss Mitchell. The dean from Northwestern has some questions about tomorrow's panel. And Dr. Harmon will need you backstage in 15 minutes for your introduction. Richard's eyebrows rose at the respectful way Tiffany addressed me. You seem to know the staff quite well. I do, I replied simply. Confusion flickered across his face. Are you more involved with this event than just attending? You could say that. Richard's retort was cut short by the conference MC announcing the opening of the event, followed by, and now to deliver our official welcome, please join me in welcoming EventSphere's Chief Operating Officer, Marcus Johnson. Richard's gaze darted between Marcus on stage and me. I could almost see his mind working, trying to connect the dots. If you'll excuse me, I said, I should get to my seat. Richard's eyes narrowed. What exactly is your role here, Paula? Before I could answer, Marcus's voice boomed through the speakers. On behalf of our founder and CEO, Paula Mitchell, and the entire EventSphere team, I'm delighted to welcome you to the National Economics Forum. Richard's face went completely blank, then flushed with disbelief. You're the CEO. You own EventSphere. I founded it 12 years ago, I said quietly. We now manage over 100 major conferences annually across the country, including this entire economics series. His mouth opened and closed without words, a sight I had never witnessed in our 15 years of marriage. Your keynote begins in 12 minutes, I added professionally. Our team has prepared everything according to your specifications. I'm sure you'll do wonderfully. Excuse me. I walked away back straight head high toward the reserved front row seat with my name on it. As founder and CEO, I would be sitting directly in front of the podium where Richard would deliver his keynote. From the corner of my eye, I saw him still standing frozen, watching me move confidently through a conference space that was essentially my domain. When Richard took the stage 12 minutes later, his typically smooth delivery was uncharacteristically stilted at first. He kept glancing at me in the front row, visibly thrown by my presence and position. But being the professional academic he was, he eventually found his rhythm and delivered a competent presentation on economic forecasting models. During the Q&A session, an attendee asked about practical applications of his research for business planning. Richard gave a theoretical answer, and I could see the audience's interest waning. The moderator, sensing the disconnect, turned to me. Ms. Mitchell, as someone who has built a successful business in a competitive market, would you like to comment on how economic forecasting models like Dr. Harmon's might be applied practically, All eyes, including Richard's, turned to me. Drawing on my years of business experience and the economics knowledge I had acquired, I offered a concise perspective on how theoretical models could be translated into strategic planning tools for businesses of different sizes. The audience responded with appreciative nods, and several people took notes. Richard's expression was unreadable as I finished speaking, but the slight tightening of his jaw told me everything I needed to know. When the session ended, attendees swarmed the stage to speak with Richard and the moderator. I slipped out to check on the preparation for the afternoon breakout sessions. 20 minutes later, as I was discussing schedule adjustments with Alexis, Richard approached us. "Paula, might I have a word?" he asked, his academic politeness firmly back in place. Alexis looked at me questioningly. I nodded, and she discreetly moved away. "Your company has done an adequate job with the conference setup," Richard began. Though the microphone volume could be adjusted, even now he couldn't offer a straightforward compliment. I almost laughed. "I'll have the audio team look into it," I replied professionally. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. "So this is what you've built," he finally said, gesturing around the busy conference hall. I had heard EventSphere had grown, but I didn't realize the extent. "We're doing well," I acknowledged simply. "You might have mentioned your company was behind this conference when I emailed you," he said, a note of accusation in his voice. "Would you have accepted the keynote invitation if you had known?" He hesitated just a second too long. "Of course. It's a prestigious forum regardless of who organizes it." "Then it shouldn't matter that I didn't mention it." Another silence fell between us. This time, Richard broke it with a question that surprised me. "How did you do it? Build all this?" For a moment, I saw a glimpse of genuine curiosity in his eyes, perhaps even a hint of respect. I considered telling him about the long hours, the strategic decisions, the team I had carefully built. But I realized it didn't matter anymore whether Richard understood or approved of my journey. "I believed I could," I said simply, "even when you told me I wasn't smart enough." His face tightened. "I was trying to be realistic about your capabilities." "No, Richard, you were wrong about my capabilities, and I'm glad I finally stopped believing you." A conference attendee approached, eager to discuss Richard's presentation, saving us from further conversation. I excused myself and returned to my role as CEO, circulating among guests, solving logistical issues, and ensuring the event ran smoothly. Richard and I didn't speak again during the conference. He delivered his scheduled sessions professionally, but I noticed him watching me interact with industry leaders and university representatives. I wondered what he was thinking as he observed the respect with which people treated me, the confidence with which I moved through the professional world he had once suggested was beyond my intellectual capacity. On the final day, as Richard was preparing to leave, I saw him pause by the conference feedback table, where attendees were raving about the organization and innovative format of the event. He looked up and caught my eye across the room. For a brief moment, we simply gazed at each other, me standing amidst the successful business I had built him, holding his academic papers that had once seemed like the only significant achievement in our household. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement before turning to go. It wasn't an apology or even explicit respect, but it was a recognition. After years of dismissing my potential, Richard had finally been forced to see me clearly. As I watched him walk away, I felt a weight lifting. I no longer needed his validation or approval. The final page of our story together had been written, and I was the author. In the 5 years since that conference, EventSphere has continued to flourish. We now have offices in 5 cities and over 100 employees, managing conferences and events across North America and Europe. Last year, we were acquired by a larger business services firm, allowing me to step back from day-to-day operations while remaining on the board. The unexpected encounter with Richard became a pivotal moment in my personal growth. Seeing his reaction when he realized the full extent of what I had built without his support or belief provided a closure I hadn't known I needed. The last vestiges of self-doubt that had lingered from our marriage finally dissolved. Richard and I have had no further contact since that conference. Occasionally, I hear updates about his career through mutual acquaintances. He received a distinguished professor title at Stanford and published another book. I genuinely wish him well, not out of any remaining affection, but because holding on to resentment only limits your own potential for happiness. The most meaningful outcome of my journey has been the opportunity to mentor other women facing similar challenges. I established a scholarship program for community college students pursuing entrepreneurship, particularly those who have been told their dreams are unrealistic. Each year, we fund business education for 10 women who demonstrate vision and determination despite lacking traditional credentials. I also regularly speak at women's business forums about overcoming imposter syndrome and recognizing when criticism is meant to control rather than help. The story of my conference encounter with Richard has become a powerful illustration of coming full circle, though I always change his name and some details out of professional courtesy. The greatest lesson I've learned and share with others is that success isn't about proving critics wrong. That mindset still gives them power over your journey. True success comes from proving yourself right, vindicating your own inner voice that whispered you can when others said you couldn't. At 57, I've found peace with my past and excitement for my future. The girl who once believed she needed a prestigious husband to validate her worth now runs boardrooms and mentors the next generation of entrepreneurs. The woman who was told she wasn't smart enough to succeed built a multi-million-dollar company from the ground up. Sometimes I think about that conference day when Richard realized who I had become. But mostly, I think about all the women I've met since who have their own Richards in their lives' voices telling them they're not enough. If my story helps even one of them find the courage to prove herself right, then every difficult moment of my journey was worthwhile. Have you ever had someone underestimate your abilities only for you to prove them wrong? Or maybe you're still working toward that moment of vindication. Share your experiences in the comments below. Remember that the people who try to limit you often become the unwitting catalyst for your greatest achievements. If you found value in my story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences that might resonate with your own journey. Thank you for listening, and remember the only validation that truly matters is the one you give yourself.